Well, to get a better understanding of the disruptions in Mthatha, as well as an overall picture of how the first day of voter registration has gone elsewhere, we're joined by the IEC's Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Electoral Matters, Masego Sheburi. Mr. Sheburi, very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Full View. Well, at the heart of this matter is the constitutional right of every eligible South African to register and vote. I'm sure you've been listening to this clip that we've just played now. Just how seriously does the IEC view the disruption in Ward 37, and what immediate steps have been taken to sort of ensure that voters are not disenfranchised? I mean, does the IEC perhaps regard this as an infringement of electoral rights, and who bears the responsibility when the voters cannot access registration stations?
Indeed, all of us must frown on the type of behavior reported by the people being interviewed by the station. The act of registering to be on the voters' roll is a condition precedent to participation in an election. It is a right guaranteed for every citizen in the Constitution. So where people have grievance of whatever nature, by all means, they may air those grievances, but those grievances must not infringe on the exercise of other persons' rights, especially for rights as important as the right to register, to vote, and to influence affairs in our community. We will again open stations tomorrow. I know my colleagues in the Eastern Cape have been in contact with the South African Police Services to ensure that tomorrow, even if the protest persists, those of the citizens who want to go to voting stations to avail themselves of the convenience of a voting station-based registration may be able to do so without disruption and undue interference.
And having said that, Mr. Sheburi, you've cited a 99% on-time opening rate for 23,699 stations. That means over 200 stations didn't open at 8 o'clock. Where were they, and why were they late? And are the voters in those areas being compensated with extended hours today?
Now, in all of those stations, the primary reason why stations did not open on time were community unrests. Our staff were on site. They were either physically removed from those places, or we've had padlocks changed. Our staff arrived with keys, but those keys can't operate those stations, as the viewer indicated now, that the community had used an alternative padlock to lock those stations. In all of those instances, our staff were on time, but owing to matters unrelated to the registration, matters unrelated to elections, our staff members could not open those stations.
But then
on time.
What will happen? What will happen? Will the people be compensated with the lost hours?
Everyone who's at the queue before the stations close at 5 will be assisted. Tomorrow, we are at it again. We open the stations from 8 until 1700 hours. Those who are able to can then go on our online voter registration portal, which is data-free, to take advantage of that facility to register to vote. Registration remains open until the date on which the minister officially proclaims and calls the date of an election.
And I see that the station count dropped from 23,706 in June to 23,699 now. What exactly happened to those 7 stations, and were any communities left without a nearby registration point as a result?
No, to the contrary. Voting stations must follow settlement patterns. Those stations were opened in anticipation of voters being moved from one area to the next. The moves did not materialize. Secondly, voting stations were created in anticipation of people registering at those stations. Where we did not have registrations, we merged those stations, informed the voters affected by that move, and re-registered them with their consent in the new voter registration point. So no voter is left without a point of representation or a registration station.
And strong footing, that's the Commission's language. So what would day one have had to look like for you to call it weak? And what's the actual threshold that you're measuring against?
There are a number of indicators for our performance. One is the efficiency of our logistics. In other words, the rate and the number of stations that were open at the appointed hour of 8 o'clock in the morning. Two, the rate of staff, the hold up of our technology, and that we did not have as many disruptions as we've had in the past. And another indicator would have been the flow of voters at the voting station by the time we first briefed the nation at 12 o'clock. At that point, the rate of turnout at voting station was comparable to the first day of voter registration on weekend one over the weekend of the 20th and the 21st of June. And from that basis, we thought that we are on a strong footing to give South Africans an opportunity for a last opportunity for in-station and in-person voter registration.
Let's talk about the turnout tracking. Is it ahead, is it behind, or is it perhaps in line with your internal projections for this final weekend? And what are those projections specifically?
Historically, we have better showing over the last registration weekend. It's still too early to call because we have a full day tomorrow. By midday on Monday, we will then share the yield of the new registrations, total activity, as well as the granular demographics around age, around gender, the rate at which people turned out, the time that people most likely went to the voting station. And at that point, we can quantitatively assess whether we performed better than the first registration weekend or we performed better than historical patterns of second voter registration.
And having said that, I mean, with 27.9 million people already on the roll and a national election now less than 100 days out, is this weekend really about growing the roll, or is it mainly a cleanup exercise for existing registrations? And if it's the latter, should we be concerned about how many people are still not registered at all?
From our perspective as an election management body, we take rate of turnout as an important indicator of the health of a democracy. You are correct. The registration weekend affords us a number of opportunities. One, to sharpen our logistics. Two, to clean up the voters' roll. But more importantly, because this election is a local government election, we have constituencies which we call wards. And for that reason, only people who are ordinarily resident in those wards must influence outcome of election in those wards. Before this election, the Municipal Demarcation Board would have undertaken an exercise to review the outer boundaries of municipalities as well as to redelimit new ward configurations. It is exceedingly important for that reason that we offer people opportunities to inspect their details, to update their details so that their registration accords to a ward in which they are ordinarily resident. In a national and provincial election, that requirement is not that absolute. However, in the elections that are due on the 4th of November, it is absolute that a person must be linked to a voting district in a ward in which they are ordinarily resident.
All right, Mr. Masego Sheburi, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Simply.
That was IEC's Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Electoral Matters, Masego Sheburi, just reflecting on day one of the voter registration weekend. And the voting registration stations have already closed about 45 minutes ago and will open tomorrow morning.